Hi, Kylie again. Let's continue our talk about what you need to know about you before you talk to your designer, architect. And the one I'm going to talk about today is one of my favourites. It's the kitchen. I love the kitchen. I spend a lot of time in my kitchen. Love to cook, love to eat. And so the kitchen is just one of my favourites. And I actually worked in kitchen design in sales while studying the buildings, the full building design. The kitchen is incredibly personal. Yes, if you rent or buy a house, you will adapt to what's there. You know, we as humans are incredibly adaptable. And so we learn, drainer on the right, drainer on the left. We learn to adapt, it doesn't hurt us. But if you're going to go to the expense and the design of having a kitchen designed in a new house or in a renovation, stop and think, because this is one of the spaces in the house that does the most intense functioning. And by that I mean there is a ton of stuff going on in this little space, and it has to cope with that. It's a hard-wearing space, it's a hard-working space, and there's a lot you need to know. Now, when I deal with my clients, I generally get them to have a really hard think about how they use their kitchen now, and we start with, how do you cook? I know that sounds a bit funny, but how do you cook? There are so many options now. You might do a lot of frying. I personally do a lot of frying. I do a lot of baking. So an oven and a cooktop is really important for me. The Thermomix has really changed things. The oven and the cooktop is becoming less and less vital. There's microwaving now. Do you microwave a lot of your food? Do you steam oven a lot of your food? Do you steam oven or do you steam on your cooktop? Do you stir fry? If so, do you stir fry on a cooktop or do you have a separate, plug-in stir fry? Do you use toaster ovens? Do you have a toaster? A lot of people now, I would very happily live without a toaster. I don't eat grapes and cereals. I don't need a toaster. So you can toast sweet potato slices, but you can do that under the grill. Do you need a toaster? Do you need a kettle? All those sorts of things in terms of that's just how you cook. Toasted sandwich maker. There's all sorts of things. What appliances do you use to cook? Do you need a hand blender when, do you use it in a beaker or do you actually blend on the stove? I blend on the stove. Probably not a great safety thing to tell you about, but if I'm making soups, there's a PowerPoint next to my stove. I take it off the actual heating element and I blend it in the pot. Do you do that? And that's just cooking. Then there's different things about things like juicing, very popular as well. Juicers are big. They are big, cumbersome things. Quite often they're too tall to actually fit in the standard cupboard if you want to leave it intact. Like when you rinse it all out and you wash it, do you want to put it all back together before you put it away? Or you're happy to pull it all out in pieces and then put it together? Personally, I've used juicers before. I want it all put together before I put it away, because when I decide I want a juice, I just want it to happen. So I don't want to put it all together. Little things like that. And there are so many different appliances. How often do you bake? In terms of cakes and things like that. So therefore, you may have a mixmaster, you may have blenders, you may have all sorts of different things that you use all the time. Coffee machine. Coffee machine, one of the most common things you'll see in houses now, and yet so many kitchens aren't designed to accommodate the coffee machine and a Thermomix. And, if you've got a couple of kids, you may have a toaster with 4 slots in it. You want a kettle on the bench. All of a sudden your workspace is full. So what it's great to do before you get a kitchen designed is go through your kitchen now and list all the appliances that you actually use. Don't worry about the ones sitting in the back of the cupboard that, Auntie Muriel gave you and you keep it out of obligation, but you've never actually used it. Sell that one, get some money back, and just keep the stuff that you use. Then there's not only that sort of thing, it's how you function in your space. How do you function in your space? So if you tell me your style of cooking is you do a lot of stir fries, then I know you're going to need a space where you need all of your ingredients pre-cut, pre-set up. You need your sauces out. So you need your prep space to not only be big enough to prep, but to store all your bowls to get ready. That needs to be next to where your wok is with everything else. You need the space to be able to do all of that efficiently. Do you, while you're cooking, do you want your utensils on the bench? Or are you happy to go to a drawer to get your utensils? Do you want that drawer where you're standing, or do you want it back near the dishwasher? This is what happens in a lot of kitchens, is that drawer, the cutlery drawer, is put near the dishwasher so that you can put your stuff from your dishwasher straight away. Really practical at the end of the day. But if you're cooking, do you want to have to go and dig through, do you want to have to leave what you're cooking to go to the other side of the kitchen to get a teaspoon? Or do you want that here where you're cooking? Personally, what I do is I keep my ladles, egg flips, wooden spoons, all my stirring and stuff like that in a jar next to my cooktop. I keep my stuff like teaspoons and knives and forks and stuff like that in a drawer somewhere else in the kitchen. And if I've got the space, at the moment I rent because I'm currently, looking for the next great project. And if I've in a kitchen that I've designed myself, ideally I will have my utensils on the bench. I will have my cutlery and stuff in a drawer on the other side. And literally I'm using these hands because I want my utensils there on my right. I want my crockery, cutlery and stuff like that on my left. And do you want, while you're cooking, your herbs and spices close by, or are you happy to trundle off to the pantry when you suddenly go, oh, I need paprika? Are you happy to leave what you're cooking to go and do that? Or do you want your spices, your sauces and things like that at hand while you're cooking? If you're not a cook, a lot of people now very rarely cook on a cooktop and stuff like that. So question is, if you do a lot of takeout, where do you serve it? Do you then decant it onto plates and bowls and stuff like that? Where do you want that? You're going to want your plates and bowls near your crockery, near your garbage bin, ideally near the sink as well. The reason I'm saying that combination is because if you come in with plastic containers and you keep them, serve everything out, you'll either keep the plastic container in the fridge with the leftovers. If it's finished, rinse it immediately where you're standing at your sink, put it in the dishwasher. That way it's done. And so if you also barbecue a lot, you can get barbecue elements inside your kitchen. Let's be honest, part of the fun of the barbecue is the smoky flavour and stuff like that. So a lot of barbecues are outside. Do you want to be able to pass your prepped food from your kitchen directly to your barbecue area? Or do you want to have to take it out from the kitchen, through the dining room, through the doors, back around to your barbecue area? So, all of these sort of things in terms of how you function. The next one that I love asking people is how many people will be in your kitchen on an average day, in terms of if you're in there trying to prep brekkie and you've got 2 kids, they're both under your feet, your partners come in, they're trying to get something and it's bedlam because your kitchen doesn't work. A designer will need to know how many people you have in your kitchen. Do you cook with your children? Do you have girlfriends or mates that come over, you crack a bottle of wine and you spend the evening cooking together? Do you have family? Do you have family and extended family that come in and, every Sunday you have a huge gathering where everyone brings their plates that's pre-cooked, but half of it needs to be kept warm, half needs to go in the fridge, all of that sort of stuff. So all of this stuff goes in to make you an amazing functioning kitchen. New one at the moment is meal prep. Meal prep's very popular. I've meal prepped on and off for years, and what that means is you need storage space in your fridge, you need storage space in your freezer. So I make a lot of bone broth. I make my own bone broth, and I need storage space in my freezer, so I need a decent sized freezer. Accessible. You know, I don't want it stored in the garage, I want it in my kitchen. And that way, when I want something, it's right there. And I'm all about convenience in the kitchen. I'm all about making it functional. If you like to cook with your kids, do you want them on this side of the bench with you, or do you want them on that side of the bench? Do you want your visitors milling in the kitchen with you, or do you want them on the other side of the bench so there's a physical barrier so you can talk to them, but you can get on with your own stuff without tripping over people? Do you want to talk to your guests at all when they're there? These days, most people do, you know, eating and cooking is such a social function. We want to talk to our guests. We want to interact with our guests. And this is something that is becoming more and more popular. So these are all the sorts of things that you need to learn about yourself before you come to a designer. One of the pet hates, 2 pet hates, that I come across constantly in the kitchen, so I'll cover those specifically for you now. The plastic straw. Get rid of all your plastics, get glass. But as that's not an overnight sort of thing for most people, we need somewhere to put plastic straws, and even a glass drawer for glass storage has lids. Now, lids and plastic drawers, normally messy things. You can, however, get now dividers to go into your drawers that help you keep that space tidy. So it actually will take up about half as much room in that space. So that's your plastics drawer. The next one is your under sink drawer. The under sink space is generally a bit of a dead zone. You know, you shove in all your plastic bags that you're desperately saving now because you can't get them from the supermarket anymore. You're saving, you've got your cleaning stuff. You know, it tends to just be a bit of a throw everything in, and garbage bins get shoved in there, but not necessarily bins designed for the space. Or your garbage bin gets shoved just somewhere where it wasn't thought about. You can now get specific garbage drawers. I'm a huge fan of combining your garbage drawer with your under sink. Is this something that you'd like? Is this something that you'd like? If you combine your garbage drawer with your under sink drawer, you'll get smaller garbages. You've got to take the garbage out more often, you know. So are you prepared to do that? You know, do you want to, is it worth to you to spend the money on a bit better storage and maybe not a stone bench top because you want the kitchen to function better as opposed to look pretty? You know, Lemonade looks fantastic. It's got long warranties too. So it all comes down to personal preference. Have a look at materials. Another one, I know this is going on a bit, but the kitchen's huge. Handles. Handles. What sort of handles do you want on your kitchen drawers? My last house, Art House one, I had these handles. They looked fantastic, but they caught on your clothing. So I actually ripped a number of clothing items, even though they looked great. They weren't necessarily practical, and I end up with little bruises on my thighs quite regularly. So think about your handles. Do you want handles at all? I personally don't like handles anymore. What sort of handles do you think you'd like? Yes, it's your designer's job to provide you with options. Yes, it's your designer's job to suggest how your problems can be solved. If you come to your designer going, I use a Thermomix, I use a juicer, I've got a large toaster, I bake constantly, and yes, I use a wok regularly, therefore your kitchen's going to look completely different to someone who buys takeout 4 to 5 nights a week, but every Saturday night they have a group of friends come around together, they have a drink and they all cook together. It's going to be completely different. So think about your kitchen. The kitchen's exciting. I love it. I could talk about it all day, so I'll stop. The next room we're going to have a chat about is directly related to the kitchen. It's the dining room. So share this on, as I've said before, with people who are looking for renovations, looking for extensions, and just want to know what information that they need to take to their designer. So the next one is the dining room. We'll talk to you soon.